Good evening, I'm Britt Clennett in Hong Kong and welcome to Viutv News. Coming up on tonight's show. Beijing ramps up security in preparation for the 19th Party Congress kicking off tomorrow. A man who wielded a knife during a High Court hearing turns himself into the police and apologised for his actions. Donald Trump declares Obamacare dead and urges lawmakers to help him come up with a short-term alternative. Just a day to go before Beijing kicks off the Communist Party's 19th National Congress, and authorities are leaving no stone unturned. Security measures have been stepped up all around the capital as thousands of party officers from across the mainland arrive for the event. Here at train stations, people have to go through tight checkups, including body searches. Meantime, officers and police dogs have been patrolling also across the city. There's a temporary ban on selling knives in supermarkets and online, and you can't even send one by post to Beijing. The once every 5 years meeting is expected to usher in a new era of leaders and will be closely watched for signs of policy shifts in China.
We have to cooperate. The checkup stations will be very crowded. To avoid the delay, I'd better go out earlier.
I go to work by train every day. It's troublesome to go through frequent checkups.
Here in Hong Kong, a man who sparked a manhunt after wielding a knife in the High Court this morning has turned himself into the police. The man, surnamed Yu, said he was unhappy with the court after it refused to grant him compensation relating to an earlier court case. Unhappy with the verdict, he returned today with a knife to protest. Officers and police dogs combed the building and around Admiralty today after the incident. Yu has expressed remorse and said he acted out of impulse.
He is fully regretted of his behaviour today in court. Therefore, he come to the Wan Chai police station and try to admit his criminality. And I want to send a clear message to the general public. Any threatening against the court is totally unacceptable in Hong Kong.
The Chief Executive says she wants LegCo to put aside an ongoing debate on the Stamp Duty Amendment Bill so it can push ahead with talks on immigration arrangements for the cross-border rail link. Speaking just before the weekly Executive Council meeting, Carrie Lam said she wants the non-binding motion to be put towards to lawmakers on October the 25th. A third reading on relaxing stamp duty for home buyers had been scheduled to kick off on Wednesday. The bill will now have to wait to be tabled after lawmakers conclude co-location arrangements.
After securing this support from a legislative council, we still have to go through what we call a three-step process to ensure that the arrangements we are putting in place have very strong legal backing. And that three-step process necessitates a final step of local legislation, which by itself will take time, because it also has to go through Legislative Council. So we really cannot delay or defer this LegCo debate on the co-location arrangement.
Well, the move faced backlash from opposition lawmakers. They say Lam is backtracking on her promise to improve ties between the executive and legislature. Civic Party's Tanya Chan said there's plenty of time to debate co-location arrangements in early November and blasted the chief executive for breaking her trust with Pan Democrats just a day after hosting them for lunch. To the US next, where President Donald Trump has declared Obamacare dead and urged Democrats to help him come up with a short-term replacement. Speaking to reporters at the White House, Trump said Republicans in Congress were already meeting to draw up a health care plan that would last the next 6 months, or until something permanent is put in its place. But he stopped short of giving any details. Trump campaigned on ending Obamacare, also known as the Affordable Care Act, but his fellow Republicans in Congress have so far been unable to pass legislation to replace it with a more limited healthcare scheme.
They're right now having emergency meetings to get a short-term fix of healthcare, where premiums don't have to double and triple every year like they've been doing under Obamacare, because Obamacare is finished, it's dead. It's gone. It's no longer, you shouldn't even mention, it's gone. There is no such thing as Obamacare anymore. It is and I said this years ago, it's a concept that couldn't have worked. In its best days, it couldn't have worked.
Meantime, the Trump administration's standing on the Iran nuclear deal appears to be far from clear-cut. The president now says terminating the agreement is still a possibility. Just a day earlier, senior White House officials said the US would stay in. To confuse matters, though, Trump told reporters there's a greater possibility that the US would walk away from the nuclear pact with Tehran. France and Britain say they remain committed to the 2015 deal to lift sanctions on Iran in exchange for limits on its nuclear program. In other news, Ahmed Khan Rahimi, better known as the Chelsea bomber, has been found guilty of detonating a shrapnel-packed explosive that wounded 30 people in September last year. He now faces mandatory life in prison. Clennett reports.
29-year-old Ahmad Khan Rahimi was found guilty Monday and faces mandatory life in prison for planting 2 bombs in Manhattan's Chelsea neighborhood in September 2016, one of which exploded, wounding 30 people. The New Jersey man known as the Chelsea bomber is a U.S. citizen who was born in Afghanistan. He was found guilty by a federal jury in New York. Surveillance video showed Rahimi hours before the explosion walking with 2 suitcases and leaving 1 suitcase near a trash can. More video showing one of the bombs go off, blowing out windows and sending shrapnel into cars and people. Rahimi was arrested 2 days later in a shootout with police in Linden, New Jersey. Over the course of the 2-week trial in New York, prosecutors read from a bloody journal Rahimi was carrying, praising Osama bin Laden and writing, quote, "The sounds of the bombs will be heard in the streets." Authorities say the bomb was made by using a pressure cooker and a cell phone timer. Rahimi is scheduled to be sentenced on January 18th. He continues to face separate New Jersey charges over accusations that he planted a bomb on the route of a charity race, which exploded without any injuries.
Coming up next, the latest from the world of business. OK, well, first things first, let's take a look at what's been happening during the day on the Hong Kong markets. The Hang Seng index of leading shares closed the day flat, gaining less than 5 points, but still hovering around a 10-year high, 28,697 points. Investors waiting to see what happens once the National Congress kicks off from tomorrow. Now, one trade that could be the deal of the year is an offer from China for part of Saudi Arabia's state oil Aramco. Sources say PetroChina and Sinopec recently made an offer to buy up to 5% of the company. That stake is estimated to be around $100 billion. It comes as Aramco mulls its plan to float the business in what's likely to be the biggest IPO in history for a company valued at $2 trillion. Hong Kong is among the market considered for a small share sale, in addition to cornerstone investment from the likes of China. And more trouble for Uber as its European policy chief Christopher Burkhardt quits the company. He's the latest senior figure to leave the ride-hailing app. According to the Financial Times, Burkhardt is joining the electric vehicle charging network company ChargePoint. Uber has suffered a tumultuous few months, with its top boss in Britain quitting earlier this month after the company lost its operating licence in London. In June, former CEO and co-founder Travis Kalanick was forced out after a series of boardroom controversies and other regulatory battles. One company that invests